Hi, welcome to this episode of the B2B Tech Marketing Talks podcast, where we engage with leading marketing and channel leaders to get fresh perspectives and practical advice on the latest trends, effective strategies, and best practices for B2B tech marketing. I'm your host, Jeremy Balius. Today's theme is community marketing. I'm very excited because I'm joined by Kendall Breitman, community manager for Riverside.fm. Riverside is a remote recording and editing platform for podcasters, marketers, and video content creators. Coincidentally, it's the platform that we use for this very podcast. In her role as community manager, she leads Riverside's community of thousands of creators, advocating for their needs and developing and implementing strategies to build and nurture a strong sense of community among Riverside's users. This was a really fascinating conversation for me to unpack the role of community management, the role that a community has within an organizational strategy, the benefits that a community lends to the product roadmap. It's particularly fascinating to understand how they have strategically developed a feedback loop such that the community is bringing gaps, feature requests, and opportunities up into the organization, and the way that's ingested by the company and considered and prioritized against their roadmap. And then the messaging of those features and benefits from the communities then used to market the product back out, either to net new customers or back into the community itself. The way that's eliciting more trust, more brand loyalty, and bringing in new users, it is incredible to see. If community marketing or community management is new to you, this is the podcast you're going to want to listen to. And with that, let's get into the conversation. Hey, Kendall, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to dive into community management with you.
I'm really excited to have you on. We always start with going into origin story. I'd love to hear about how did you find yourself in the community management space? Where did you get started and how did things evolve to where you are today?
Yeah, so I guess I didn't really take a traditional route into this. I actually started my career as a political reporter and television producer. So I was working with Bloomberg for the 2016 election, living out of a suitcase, following the presidential candidates around. So yeah, really cool experience. Then ended up going to NBC as a television producer. And basically, I ended up moving. And when I moved to another country, I couldn't political report anymore. I didn't know the language. I didn't know as much about the political climate and everything like that. So it took it off the table, but it was at a good time because I was naturally starting to gravitate away from that life. So naturally, with a lot of reporters, the joke, the cliche is that we end up going to marketing and PR. Yeah, so I ended up actually falling into the marketing sphere. So I started as a content writer because I was like, okay, I love to report, I love to write. So this seems like a good fit. And quickly learned that content writing for marketing was so much different and didn't really call to my passions and what I really loved about journalism.
Hmm.
Yeah, and then I started to dig deep and say, what did I love? And I realized that it was hearing people's stories, like standing in a line for a rally, talking to 20 different people and saying, okay, what's the story from this? What do I take away from that? And ended up Riverside had reached out to me about a community management role. It honestly wasn't something that I had really heard of or considered before, but it was at that same time that I was really looking at what did I love about journalism. And so community management really fit in with that, about connecting with people, talking with people, hearing their stories. And so that's how it came to be. I remember my now manager sent me a job description and I was reading through it being like, wow, this really sounds like me. It sounds like a great fit. So that's my backwards way of getting into this business.
Wow, amazing. Yeah, I can totally relate to wanting to pursue something in writing and it evolving into something totally different. I think that matches my story as well.
Yeah, there's only so much that for me that I could go through being like, do we want to say grow or do we want to say expand? And talking back and forth about that. I loved writing. that the technical aspect of it was a bit harder for me when I got into marketing.
Should the call to action be discover more or find out more?
Exactly. Is it save your spot or save my spot? It actually makes a
Yep.
difference, but
Yep.
yeah, it's a grind.
It's an important consideration. That's not to put down anything content related.
Exactly. Yeah, but it's just and it really does matter. So then you're actually like, should it be my
Yeah.
spot or your spot? And you're sitting there for like weeks trying to figure out what it should be. Yeah, I ended up just gravitating towards community management.
Wow. Wow. I want to dig into community management and skill sets in a moment, but if you could talk through what even is community management first.
Yeah, that's a question that I had when
Yeah.
the aforementioned boss sent me the job description. I was like, what is this? So, community management is basically like fostering a feeling of community for your brand. So it is talking with users, it's setting up programming that speaks to them, like webinars and other types of events. I meet individually with the creators in the Riverside community to hear about what they care about, which informs our marketing, it informs our product, working closely with product for things that people want. It's really just trying to make people feel like they're a part of something by being a part of your brand or product and being a voice for the community within the brand, within the company. So it's a two-way conversation. One is that I'm communicating the values to the community, and two, it's that I'm communicating the values of the community back to the product so that we can inform our next step forward. So there's a lot of that, a lot of making people feel like they're a part of something beyond also the brand. So for us, it's I'm creating content at home, but if I'm part of the Riverside community, I really feel like I'm a content creator. I have other people around me supporting me. It makes me want to work on it more. It makes me want to continue this passion. So there are a lot of different aspects, but really it's just listening and learning and communicating.
I'm just reflecting on how meta this is because not only are we recording on Riverside, but
Mhm.
I met you through the Riverside community. And I reflect back now also on the conversations that we've had. And you always ended the call with, what can we do better? Or what's missing? Or what are the gaps? And at the time, thought you're just asking out of interest, but it's core. It sounds like it's core to what community management is.
Exactly, exactly. So it's really about making like having those conversations that I'm saying with, as you were saying, with you and other users, and then also communicating your values, what you care about, your goals, where you think we can get better within our own community, our own company. Yeah, I also compare it to influencer marketing, which is still huge. But
Mm.
sometimes it's the idea also that I can look on Instagram and see what my favorite podcaster or video creator is using. But also, when I'm thinking about actual processes, if I'm creating a podcast, for example, I might reach out to somebody else that is already in my community, my friend, and say, "What are you using to podcast?" And you'll say Riverside. So it's also this mini influencer idea that if I can make that connection with you, that will ultimately mean that you are more likely to also say, I love Riverside, I use Riverside, I feel connected to Riverside. And so it also works in that way.
As you're describing this, I'm picturing community management in tech to be a blend between having a marketing role, a product marketing role, and customer success, maybe to a degree.
Yes. Oh, for
Is that
sure.
what it's like, all of that in a blender, and that's community management?
Exactly. Yes. And it's also a lot of like product reviewing because I speak with so many people and I use the product myself. I'm also meeting with the product team all the time to say, we're adding this button. Where would you look for it? Or, oh my gosh, that seems like a really cool new feature. I know that the community is going to automatically ask, where's this? So, like, really being able to get in their heads. But a lot, yes, I'm glad that you touched on that because there is a lot of customer service that goes on in that and support, which I am not a support specialist myself, but it's about being able to connect them to the right people and make sure that everybody is like continuing that communication, whether that's support or whether that's sharing that you use Riverside or how many episodes are you all recording and having a conversation. So yeah, there are a lot of different aspects to it, all in this blender.
Yeah, amazing. Where does this community take place?
So for Riverside, I will say for Riverside specifically, we have one on Facebook and one on Discord. So that's where our community lives. We also foster community on LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram in different ways, which we could talk about. But our community hubs are basically Facebook and Discord. But for other companies, it really is about what fits in with your users and customer base. So what was important for us is that we wanted to meet people. Originally, we had Facebook, just Facebook. And the reason for that is that we wanted to meet people in their scroll. So, like, you can use Circle, for example. It's a great community platform. But when people like aren't usually going on Circle, they're going there for community. What we wanted to do is sandwich our community members saying, "Hey, what mic are you all using?" In between, like your aunt posting a life update and your friends' pictures from their vacation. Make it part of a conversation rather than I sometimes feel like when communities are put on a platform that you have to seek out, they can end up being more of a support community. Why am I going to go there? I'm going to go there because there's a glitch or something. Whereas when you put it on a social network, it becomes its own social network, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And you're so right. It's important to be present where users already are as opposed to try to condition them to go somewhere to participate in community. Want to focus in on the specifically the marketing element of the role. You touched on the idea of referrals and the propensity to refer. To what degree is community seen as a I don't know, a vehicle for marketing or an opportunity for Riverside to market through and to the community? What does that look like in your guys's, I don't know, go-to community approach?
Yeah, so there are two kind of things that we want to set ourselves up as far as what Riverside does. And so one of those things is that we listen to the community and that creating things that are catered to them. And part of that are feature requests. So a big effort that we do as far as marketing and is that people can say what features they request. So they'll say, I want to be able to animate my captions. Let's give that as an example. So then the more people that are requesting that, the more that kind of pushes up on our product roadmap. So then when we're marketing these features, we're able to say, you guys asked for it, we delivered. Maybe not in those terms, but like really focusing in on we're a company that listens to you and that wants to create better and that we're inspired by your work. So a lot of the conversations, that's just an example, but a lot of the conversations that I'll have, they inform how I will market a product. So is mobile editing? Is it really editing on the go? Are people actually editing on their phone on the go? Or is it just that some people prefer editing on their phone and some people prefer editing on their computer? And what it actually is the second one. So being able to frame different aspects, different features in a way that the community actually uses them, being very in touch with how things will be used, why, what kind of pain point they hit on, that is something that I gain a lot from in the community. But also, there are different ways. For example, we have a live stream webinar that we're doing. So I'm going to be leading the webinar. It came because I heard a lot of people saying that the next step that they want to take is live streaming. So then part of that is we're going to have a poll in the webinar that says, how are you live streaming? Are you a live stream only show? Are you live streaming are you going to record your show live and then create it into an episode and have people kind of vote in real time? So it's really the ability to create these conversations in a bunch of different ways, because the more that we do that, the more that we understand our users to inform the product, but also the more that we're able to speak directly to what they need, why they need it, and really hit the nail on the head as far as, okay, this is going to serve this purpose for you. It's going to give you your time back to work on something that you love, that kind of idea. So that is a lot of it. We also do events. And so that's the way that people can connect to their community. And I'm mentioning that because there's a statistic that like 90% of podcasts stop after episode 10. So when you are a company that's building a podcasting platform, a video creation platform, that's a statistic that we want to stay away from. We want more people to continue. So how do you make them continue? You make them feel even more like excited about their passion, more ingrained in what they're doing. That includes events, that includes learning more in webinars and things like that. So it includes having even mentors online. So the more that we can help people continue to do that craft, the more that it's also good for Riverside because we want people to obviously continue using our platform.
There's a lot to
Yeah.
go respond to there. Firstly, I'm gonna say we're currently recording episode 14 with you, which means we've outperformed 90% of
Yes.
podcast publishers.
Way
Hooray!
to go. Way to go. I'm not sure that the 90%, I might be making up the 90% statistic, but there is, I forget exactly what the numbers are, but it is a huge number of people that stop doing it after 10. And part of that is because there's a lot of people are just like, oh, I'd love to have a podcast, but as there is so much work that goes into it.
It's
So,
a lot of work. Yeah.
yeah.
I've heard similar statistics. Going back on what you were describing though, and if I could play this back to you, the way that I'm maybe understanding what you're describing is almost like a perfect feedback loop in that you are essentially crowdsourcing your roadmap to a degree from the demands or from the requests that are coming up through the community. And as those are released, you're eliciting trust and you're building rapport with existing users, but you're also using the framing of those requests as potentially the go to market of the new features in the way that you're describing the benefits or in the way that you might market that to new users. That's a really elegant feedback loop. Was that
Thank you.
intentional from the get go?
Yeah, so when I joined, we had already been using it's a system called Nult, and mainly support was using it. And so basically what it does is like a Reddit as far as upvoting. So if somebody gets a feature request, hey, I'd love to, for this example, be able to animate my captions. We put that in the Nult, and then you can, every time that somebody else requests it, you upvote it. You can even put their email address in so that you can follow up personally and say, hey, you'd requested this, and it's here. But it also was part of the strategy that I made coming into this Riverside role is there were a lot of people saying, I wish we could do this. And I was saying, thanks so much for this feedback. I'll communicate it with the team. And it's really important to me to not be talk. So there are times where if our team has heard that request before, they know what they're talking about. They're like, yes, it's on our roadmap, or yes, we're going to consider that when we add this feature, that kind of thing. But a lot of the time also, our product team will say, "Hey, do you mind if I actually get in touch with this person? I want to hear more about their workflow." Like somebody says, "I'd love a better way to organize on the platform." Great. So that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So I'll actually connect that community member with someone in product and we'll get on a 15-minute call and say, "Walk me through the process. What do you do? What are you clicking on?" And so it really becomes this beautiful feedback loop for people. But then, so an example again for captions is there were a lot of people saying, I'm having to, every time that I create a video, I have to choose the colors and the animation. And most creators are doing the same style for their captions for every video they put up. So we're noticing that and hearing that they're taking time to set those every time. So we create presets and what like caption presets. And when we go to market with it, we say, hey, here are caption presets, save your presets and save yourself the time. So like really being able to take in that feedback, make our product better, but also speak directly to why we did that for them.
I have also noticed that you are iterating fast. It
Yeah.
feels like a different experience for me than elsewhere. So, as an agency, our MarTech stack is ridiculous. And we partner with a lot of tools and vendors where what we feel are pretty significant gaps or requests just go into a black hole essentially.
Yeah,
Or if there's some type of upvote, like you said, it'll have hundreds, if not thousands, of upvotes, but those date back potentially years. Whereas Riverside, it feels like there's a update constantly. Is that what's the pace like?
wild. Yeah, as I said, my background's like at Bloomberg and NBC, these like giant companies that when you try to get one thing changed, it has to go up a million steps and you're like, "Oh my gosh, is this ever going to change?" I was really shocked when I came to Riverside of how fast everyone's really iterating. It's almost at a point where as somebody that has to communicate all of the new features, I'm like, "Wait, is this out? This is already out? I didn't even make a post for this yet." Like, it's hard to keep up. I will say that's one of the challenges of the job, which is a good thing. But I really need to be in tune with exactly what users are seeing and when. If there is a UI change, for example, I need to know about that because I need to be able to anticipate that people will come with questions. Oh my gosh, where did this button move to? So it's really a breakneck pace, I will say. And I know that a lot of tech startups will be like, you need to be able to work in a fast-paced environment. That
Yeah.
that resume, that CV kind of cliche, but it's really shockingly true with the work that our team's doing. So a lot to stay on top of.
Yeah, I think an output of that, which I can relate to, is how do you communicate that volume of change in a way that sticks? Because if you're communicating too much too frequently, people either tune out or can't keep up with the volume of change. So getting that balance right must be pretty challenging sometimes.
Yeah, and there's also a challenge in the idea that because we're so open to feedback, so if somebody requests something and I'm putting out 5 features in the meantime saying, "Hey, we heard you and here's this request," it can elicit sometimes people saying, "I requested this 3 months ago. Where's mine?" So
Mm.
it's really about we create a very high expectation for ourselves, and it's about balancing out like the idea that yes, we are listening and yes, we can take in, like, we're working on something. But I'm sure that there are a lot of people that are listening that can relate to also the fact that people think that things might be a bit easier sometimes than they are. Like, it's just one line of code. Why can't I have this sound come when somebody joins your studio? Okay, but then if you're recording, do you want the sound on? Do you want there to be a ping if somebody comes into your studio? Maybe not. How do you want to be nudged then if you don't want that sound? Like all of the considerations that go into it. So it's about we set the expectations very high of saying, "Hey, we're really listening and we are implementing and we care about what you have to say." But then also there can be frustration in you're taking all of these feature requests, where's mine? Which usually it's on the roadmap, but it is, yeah, that can be a bit of a difficult situation when it comes to how we're structuring the
Yeah.
community. Yeah.
Yeah, I could understand that. I think the counter that me being an optimist is those people are feeling heard though.
Yeah.
And they know that when they say something, someone out there vis-a-vis you is listening and is getting these messages. So I think that's ultimately a silver lining.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to take that one. So thank you. Thank you.
Hey, a couple of questions about this for business leaders who would not be accustomed to having a community strategy.
Mhm.
How does one measure success when it comes to community?
Yeah, I will say that a thing that I'm very thankful for within Riverside is that you have to have top management investment into community. It needs to be something that the upper level, the C level, that they know the importance of it. So I'm lucky enough that they were looking for a community manager, Riverside was, and know, especially with the community that we have of creators who are also trying to create their own communities, like our product was really ripe for having a community. Like, and a real important aspect of this is that your community shouldn't particularly be around your brand. It's not going to be successful that way. It needs to be around the reasoning that people are using your brand. Where our community isn't Riverside users, it's conversation creators by Riverside. And the distinction there is that people aren't trying to coalesce around your brand. They're trying to coalesce around other creators who are going through the same thing that they're going through, but we facilitate it and help make that better. So I would say that there has to be investment. So I'm glad that you're asking that as far as just even an emotional investment and like knowing that it's an important thing. And I say that because the KPIs are a bit harder to measure. We measure engagement in the community. We are measuring, it's an imperfect measurement, but the reactions of the community as we're putting out new features. Our community, as being people that are creating content, are very online. So if there's something that they don't like or that they do, you will hear about it on social. That's like how we measure negative, positive feedback. A lot of it is engagement. We'll measure how many signups we get on different webinars to measure how much our webinars are connecting with different people, then how many views those videos are getting, and their retention rates. But a lot of it, I joke in the office, and this is going to be a bit ridiculous for your listeners, but I joke that I'm measured on vibe. But
Yeah.
like, it's not actually true, but really you can feel a sentiment of when the community is happy and how they're reacting, how much they're engaging with different posts. So a lot of that has to do with that. But I heard a good comparison one time from somebody that was saying Gatorade. The Gatorade pour onto the head coach during the Super Bowl. That moment is such a moment that's ingrained in sports culture, and like it makes Gatorade a part of sports and a part of this gigantic moment. How much Gatorade are they selling by pouring that on the coach's head? We have no idea. It's just about the feeling and the idea that Gatorade ingrained themselves in this big moment in culture by doing that. I remember Powerade sponsored it one time, and they still called it the Gatorade pour. But it's just an example of like, how do you measure some of that stuff about making yourself part of a culture and a community?
Gravitating towards what you said a moment ago, yeah, and I think it was so fundamentally profound in how it is not a brand marketing play, albeit the brand marketing component comes off the back of this, but you are building community around the fact that these are individuals either working for companies of all sizes, or they're solopreneurs, or they're creators, or but all of them have the intention of recording and publishing online. And Riverside represents the mechanism to do more easily and at a higher quality, and whatever other features come with that. But but building the community around the intention, I think, is so solid of a strategy, because what you're effectively saying is this community exists regardless of whether you exist. You just
Yes.
happen to be the ones pulling them together, but you're also benefiting from that as well through the engagement, through the eliciting of trust, by the listening, by the feature rollouts. I'm going to
By
have
the
to reflect on
continuation.
that. That is such a solid strategy.
Thank you. Yeah, I like to think about it like a gym. If you are going to create a group for your gym, like you'll probably get some people to join it that go to the gym. But if you create a community around a weightlifters who support each other, that's going to cast a wider net. It's going to still, but you're facilitating it. You could say, hey, I'm Kendall from this gym, and here are some techniques that you can do. Or I can say, hey, what's everyone lifting? I don't weight lift, so I'm just giving examples. But like the idea that you can facilitate a conversation that doesn't have to be completely around your brand, it can be around the end goal and why people are using your product.
Incredible. Incredible.
Thank you.
What have you yourself learned or been surprised by in the last 2 years of doing this?
I would say that I was even surprised by how to set up the community. I'll explain what I mean. So when I first joined Riverside, I was like, okay, community. I'm from a journalism background, as I said. What do people want? They want to connect. They want to network. I was really on this networking path. And then I spoke with users, which I highly recommend for anybody who's going to be doing with the community. I made a goal to speak with at least one user a day for the first 2 months. And what I learned from that is yes, they want to network, they want to connect, but why? They want to learn more. They want to connect with somebody who maybe has been doing it for longer and hear more from them about their best practices. They want to learn how to streamline, they want to learn how to create better social clips, that kind of thing. And so I realized that what we need to build this community around is learning. So even fundamentally, like that was a surprise to me that I was like, I made an assumption. So what I've realized is that there really is nothing better than a conversation. I can make a bunch of assumptions on how a user will use something. For example, mobile editing. Your brain goes to, I assume, editing on the go. But that's not actually what people are doing with it. I always knew as a journalist the power of conversation, but I guess I was surprised when I joined that a lot of my assumptions weren't actually true to what the community wanted and how much you can actually learn from just hopping on a call and having a conversation.
That's such an amazing uncovering, and I think that's an awesome segue. As I'd love to really hone in on those businesses because we're in the B2B tech landscape. For marketers, for channel leaders, for partner leaders, even leadership teams of tech companies, why should they consider community management? They're obviously in B2B and it's a slightly different landscape. You have plenty of B2B clients and customers as well, but in what ways would you talk about community as a marketing vehicle as well as a strategic investment? And how would you advise them to consider it?
I would say that everybody's community is going to look different. So no community should be the same because no community is the same. So I would say that no matter what, the connecting thread is that the more that you create community, the more that you create some type of loyalty and connection. And so every brand can benefit from that. So maybe your community's on LinkedIn, or maybe your community is a Slack group of top kind of users or people that you're communicating most with that then can communicate with each other. You need to think about what the benefit would be for them to be part of your community. There are a lot of benefits to create a community as far as loyalty for a brand. But what's going to make your clients, your customers have a benefit from being part of the community? And even with B2B, you can find those kinds of those benefits for them. So whether that's connections, whether they want to be connecting with other businesses, having that kind of community, whether that's even creating this feedback loop and having a place where somebody could say, hey, I want there to be more of this, and another business, like another representative from that business to say, we've actually experienced that too. The power of seeing their conversation and what they point out with each other is so beneficial to your brand. But on their end, it also makes them feel heard and makes them feel like you're iterating to be the best for them. So I would say whether you're B2B, B2C, there is so much power in whoever your clients are, feeling heard, feeling listened to, and being able to glean those takeaways from those conversations. Like for example, we have a product partners group and it's on WhatsApp and it's about creators, all different kinds of creators that are basically beta testers, and seeing their questions and having another person say, oh, this is my workaround for it, but I wish we had this. Oh my gosh, that'd be amazing. I could do X, Y, and Z on that. So beneficial for us to be able to see, and also so beneficial for them. So I don't think that this is particularly B2C. Riverside was like very ripe for having a community. But I think that if anyone listening to this can think about what their community would consist of, who their community can consist of, then you can pretty easily go into from there, okay, what would the benefits be? How would it be structured? What do I want to see out of it? So I think that there's definitely room for B2B communities.
Yeah, I would agree with you. We're already seeing partnership ecosystems growing and expanding. And I love the idea of exploring, okay, how do we bring them together into a community potentially is very much worth considering.
Yeah, it's even like your sales team is reaching out and connecting with different with different companies, organizations, and they're the point of contact. If they have an issue, they could reach out to that person. And there's so much purpose for that and so much benefit from that. So it's the same idea to just have somebody, have a community of somebodies that they feel like they can rely on to get the information they need, to get the support they need. And I'm not just talking about like tech support, I'm talking about suggestions, that kind of support. So being able to have that B2B, B2C, any of that is it's really just it's already baked into the B2B product as of sales. Yeah. And I even find on that kind of note, when I speak with a user, they're more likely to comment on the things that we post. They're more likely to like them, engage with them in any sort of way because they feel that sort of connection. I just feel like anyone can really benefit from that.
It's amazing. This has been such an illuminating conversation. I think there's so many insights that you've dropped here for us to take away and reflect on. I really appreciate you coming on today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm so glad that we got like community management is really just it's one of those jobs that when people say, "What do you do?" and you say community management, they're like, "What's that?" So but it's so cool when you really unpack it and like the psychology behind it and the method behind it. So I'm really thankful that you had me on your show to talk about it.
Thanks so much for coming on, Kendall.
Yeah, thank you.